Welcome to part two of our read aloud of Bo Rush's sports themed novel Basketball Brother. In part one, we were introduced to Leo Looper, and he has moved from Prairie View, Kansas to Paris, Indiana, so a fellow Hoosier. And he's kind of struggling with the move. He and his mom have moved around a lot over the years, he described, and now starting a new school in November. It's the middle of the school year. He's just not real thrilled with the situation, so he's started his own personal breakfast boycott because he says he can control that, even though he can't control all the moves. He loves basketball, but unfortunately he hasn't been able to play in a long, long time because of that traumatic injury that he had that was described at the beginning of part one. So if you haven't checked that out yet, make sure you go back and listen to part one. So when we pick up with part two, he has gotten into his new class with his new teacher, Mrs. Bottle, her fifth grade classroom, and he's just really unsure what to do. He doesn't know the routines or procedures, and he's in a social studies group, but he revealed he doesn't really know how to read. I don't know why I'm so bad at reading. Maybe it's from switching schools so much. When all the other kids were learning to read in first and second grade, I guess I was busy trying to figure out where the bathroom was and where to find scissors when I had to cut something. I know some words, like short, easy words, but when the words have a bunch of letters, I kind of get lost. So I had to get real good at fake reading. It's easy when you're supposed to sit at your desk and read by yourself. You just open the book and stare at it and turn the page every now and then. If a teacher asks you what it's about, you say you just started it, so it's too soon to really know. The problem is when you have to read out loud. That's when you wish your hardest that the fire alarm would go off. If you know the first couple of words, you can say them real strong, like reading's real easy for you. Then when you come to a word you don't know, you look real quick at the pictures to see if they give you any clues. If there aren't any pictures, or if the pictures don't help, you have two choices. You can make the first sound in the word, then mumble the rest, then keep going like that till you get to the end. Or you can just sit there and not say anything. You can just squint your eyes and look like you're having trouble seeing the words because you need glasses. 2 more minutes to wrap up your team's practice, Mrs. Bottle called out. Hurry up, Leo, we've got to finish this, the girl pleaded. Yeah, just read it, dude, the taller of the two boys told me. You do know how to read, right? The other boy, the one with the mohawk, laughed. Sure I do, I said. I looked at the papers again and cleared my throat. I could feel the sweat running down from my forehead. Some of it got in my eyes and started to burn. What are you crying about, dude? Said the tall boy. Yeah, the judicial branch isn't that sad, laughed the boy with the mohawk. The two boys started whispering and joking to each other, and I'm pretty sure it wasn't about the judicial branch. I put my hand on my forehead to shield my eyes from the other kids. I really wasn't crying or anything. It was just that all that sweat dripping down was stinging my eyes. Mrs. Bottle rang the little bell again, and all the students immediately jumped up and got in a line at the door. I went to the back of the line and looked down at the floor. I didn't want anyone to see my red eyes or my limp. The doctor told me I needed to build up my leg muscles. So at recess, I walked slowly around the edge of the playground. I couldn't run or jump yet, but it did seem like walking was getting easier. Maybe Mom was right that the limp would go away. None of the kids were watching me and laughing at the stiff-legged way I walked. They were all too busy playing. There were some kids on the swings and a few more playing with jump ropes. But the amazing thing was what was going on at the basketball courts. Paris Elementary had 3 whole basketball courts, and they were full of kids playing 5-on-5. Every other school I'd ever been to had 1 court, and it was usually empty. I stood there and watched in disbelief. It looked like these kids really loved basketball. Just like me. Maybe moving to Paris wasn't going to be all bad. Not surprisingly, the tall kid who had laughed at me during social studies was grabbing every rebound in the game he was playing in. And in the short time I watched, the kid with the mohawk hit 3 straight 3-pointers. We need to practice. I turned and saw the girl with the red hair standing next to me. Uh-oh. She was holding those judicial branch papers. Huh? We need to practice reading. She held the papers up in front of me. But it's recess. Look, do you want dopes like Parker Bone and Ethan Crum laughing at you all the way through high school? The dopes must be that giant rebounding machine and Mr. Mohawk. I could see this girl wasn't going to leave, so I took the papers from her hand. I looked at the words again, but they were just as hard to read as before. The judicial branch, she began, pointing at the first 3 words. The judicial branch, I repeated. Yep, go on. Is the what? She asked. It's the I was looking around in a panic for a way out. Yeah, the what? Keep going. Look, I don't know. I pushed the papers back at her and started to walk away, but the girl just followed me. Look, I know you can't read. Leave me alone, I hissed at her. I can help you learn. I don't need any help. I kept walking as fast as my stiff right leg would let me, but the girl darted around me and blocked my path. My name's Natalie, she said, holding out her hand. I just looked at her. I was breathing hard from walking so fast. Well, Leo, are you going to shake my hand or just stare at it like you've never seen one before? She was smiling in a friendly way as she continued holding out her hand. I glanced back at the playground to see if the other kids were all watching and laughing at me. But no one was. I looked at the girl again, and she was still smiling. I finally reached out and shook her hand. Okay, now here's the deal. Every day at recess, I teach you how to read. Why? Because everyone needs to know how to read, Leo. And besides, reading's easy once you get going. Okay, I said slowly, still unsure about the whole thing. What do you get out of the deal? Nothing. Nothing? You sure about that? Sure, I'm sure. I studied her face for a clue that it was all some big trick she was playing on me. Well, she just kept smiling. The bell rang and all the kids started racing back to the school. I started walking and Natalie walked beside me. Well, now that you mention it, I guess there is one thing. She put her arm around my shoulder and leaned toward me so no one could hear. You could tell me why you limp. I darted a look at her to see if she was mocking me. But she just kept smiling in that same friendly way of hers. Even though I messed up, well, pretty much everything the rest of the whole day, Natalie kept popping up to save me. After recess, I accidentally went into the wrong classroom. The tables and chairs and papers on the walls all looked pretty much the same, so I didn't realize it was a 3rd grade class. Just as I was about to sit down, Natalie swooped in and grabbed my hand and took me to our room. When we had to measure angles in the math book, I thought I was going to have to guess at them because I didn't have anything to measure with. But then Natalie walked by my table and handed me a compass. That made it a whole lot easier to get the answers. At lunch, all the other kids were pushing me past me and grabbing food. I didn't know which line to get in, so I just stood there looking like a dope. Suddenly, Natalie put a tray in my hands. Follow me, Leo, she said. I followed her through the line and watched how to choose the food without the lunch ladies yelling at you. I ended up with macaroni and cheese, which I don't really like mac and cheese, but Natalie sure does. Everybody went outside to play after lunch. Natalie disappeared, so I started walking around the edge of the playground again. The doctor told me to walk every day and do a bunch of leg exercises. I didn't want all the kids staring at me, so I skipped the leg exercises. I figured I could do those at home when I got there. As I walked past the basketball courts, I saw Natalie playing in a full court game. She was real quick and a good dribbler. When she ran up and down the court, her red ponytail flashed in the sun like a flag. More than anything, I wished I could play basketball with the other kids. If only I didn't have this messed up knee. The doctor said I'd be able to play basketball again. He said I'd be able to run and jump like other kids, but not until my right leg was strong enough. He said I could ruin everything if I tried playing too soon. So I stood there watching them play. I could tell these Paris kids were crazy about basketball. As much as I hated moving here, I figured I wouldn't mind it so much if I could play basketball with them every day. One good thing about my new teacher is that she doesn't pile on the homework. All we had to do was read for 30 minutes, and it didn't matter what we read, nobody was checking or anything. So I flipped through a thin catalog that Mom had brought home from work. I looked at all the different kinds of toilet paper and toilet paper holders, and man, I never knew there could be that many types of toilet paper. Except they didn't call it toilet paper, they called it bath tissue. I guess they figured people would get embarrassed talking about toilets and stuff. It was a real boring catalog, so I decided I'd read enough. I checked the clock. It had only been 5 minutes. Who could possibly read for a whole half hour anyway? Besides, I had something else I needed to do. My leg exercises. The doctor in Prairie View had shown me a whole bunch of different exercises I was supposed to do every day. They build up your leg muscles so your knee doesn't have to do all the work. The doctor said if I did the exercises for 30 minutes every day, my leg would be as good as new in 3 or 4 months. I may not be any good at reading, but math's pretty easy for me. So I figured if I did the exercises for an hour every day, my leg would be ready to play basketball in a month and a half or so. That's what I've been doing every day since they cut off the cast. 30 minutes in the morning and 30 more at night. Even the 2 days we spent driving from Kansas to Indiana, I sat in the back seat and did leg lifts and stuff. I know it sounds strange, but I like to do the exercises in my underwear. That way I can stand in front of a mirror and see if my leg muscles are getting bigger. Mom even gave me a tape measure to wrap around my thigh and calf and keep track of how much they were growing. I measured them every day and wrote it all down in a notebook. The day after they cut off the cast, my right thigh was only 12 inches around and the calf was only 8. My leg looked like a stick, like a flamingo bird's leg. I hurried into my bedroom and pulled off my pants. This time when I measured, my right thigh was up to 18 inches. I don't know how big my leg was before the accident, but there's no way it was this strong. As I stood before the mirror, my leg muscles looked gigantic. They looked like they didn't even belong to the rest of my body. My left leg was just as big because a few weeks back I realized I had to do the exercises with both legs so they'd stay balanced. I wanted to test my legs out by seeing how high I could jump. I grabbed my basketball and twirled it in my hands. Then I put it above my head like I was going to shoot a jump shot. But I remembered how the doctor had said I could ruin everything if I tried playing basketball too soon. It had been only 5 weeks since I'd started the exercise, and I was determined to wait the full month and a half. I put the ball down and stood with my arms spread in front of me. Keeping my back straight, I bent my knees and lowered my body. Only a few inches because the doctor had warned me that a full squat might damage my knee. I could feel my thighs swell with power as I squatted. In the mirror on the closet door, they looked like 2 steel pistons. I held the squat for 10 seconds, then the phone rang. "Hi, Mom," I said as I picked up the phone. "Hi, Leo. Listen, honey, I have to work a bit longer, so remember there's chicken salad in the fridge." "Got it, Mom." "Everything okay?" "Yeah, I'm just doing my exercises." "Did you finish your homework first?" "We didn't have any." "Okay, well, I'll be home in an hour or so. Call me if you need anything." "I love you, Mom." "Love you, Leo." I felt bad about lying to Mom about the homework, but it was better than telling her I'd been reading the toilet paper catalog. I returned to my position in front of the mirror. Just as I started to squat again, there was a loud thump against the bedroom wall. I stood up straight and listened. On the other side of that wall was the neighbor's half of the house. Some guy with a real bushy black beard lived there. I'd seen him when I got home from school. He had opened his front door and threw some meat on the porch for the dog. He looked over and growled at me just like his dog did. My hand was shaking so bad I almost couldn't put the key into the front door lock. Then he'd slammed his door. As I stood there in my underwear listening, the dog started barking out front. I heard what sounded like banging on the neighbor's front door. I quickly tiptoed through the living room and carefully peered through the curtains covering the front window. It was getting dark out, but I could see 2 policemen standing on the porch. Light suddenly shone on them as the neighbor's door opened. The guy with the beard stepped out and one of the policemen took him by the arm. As they started down the porch steps, the guy with the beard suddenly turned and looked right at me. "Hey, take care of that dog. I'll be back in 20 years. He laughed crazily as the 2 cops led him to a police car parked in front. I watched them drive away, then I slowly opened the front door a crack. The dog turned toward me and showed his teeth. He started barking loudly and jumping at me. He kept doing it even though the rope yanked him back every time. Then I remembered I was only wearing my underwear, so I quickly closed the door and went back to finish my exercises. When Mom got home, I told her all about the cops taking away the crazy neighbor. "Oh my goodness," she put her hand over her mouth. "My poor baby." She put her arms around me like she wanted to protect me, but it was a little late for that. "But that's not all, Mom." "What do you mean, Leo?" "We have a little problem." She pulled back to look down at me. "What kind of problem?" Out there. I nodded toward the front porch. I think we have a dog now. Mom's eyes grew big, then she suddenly smiled. That's wonderful! I always wanted you to have a dog. She took me by the hand and opened the door. I started to pull back. Mom, I don't want that dog. The dog started growling and barking the second Mom opened the door. But Mom just kept smiling. Oh, isn't he cute? No, he wants to bite my head off. Close the door, Mom. Mom stepped back inside and closed the door. Look, we'll just figure it all out tomorrow, Leo. The next morning, when Mom could see that I wasn't interested in eating the scrambled eggs she had cooked, she picked up my plate and held it out to me. Why don't you see if that dog wants the eggs? He might start acting friendlier if we feed him. Dogs don't eat eggs, do they? Sure they do. Here, let me add some pepper. Mom sprinkled some pepper on top of the eggs, then I carried the plate to the front door. I tried to steady myself for the angry dog. But when I opened the door, he didn't start barking like usual. I carefully poked my head out to see if the dog was planning some kind of sneak attack. But I didn't see him on the porch. I took a step and then another, looking left and right. That's when I saw the rope lying there with the end chewed off. The dog had escaped. And that'll be a good stopping point for part 2. Getting to know Leo a little bit more. He seems to be very self-conscious. Doesn't want to be the center of attention. Was very worried about people potentially making fun of the way he walked. But if he was just honest with them about, I had this really bad accident and it messed my knee up real bad, I'm sure all of those other students would have been very understanding. But it seems like he's made a new friend. Natalie, who's another classmate of his in Mrs. Bottle's room. She seemed very genuine and generous, asking if he wanted help learning to read and offered to give up part of her recess time to help him accomplish that goal. And so she seems like she's going to be a good support system for Leo in this new situation. But now he's also got this dog who they are not off on a good start with each other. Dog's very aggressive towards Leo, and Leo hasn't been super friendly towards the dog. Not mean, but just very scared and hesitant. So we'll have to see how that plays out and whether or not they'll be able to find this dog that he's now in charge of. So join us back for part 3 of Basketball Brother, and we'll see you there. Bye.